Hello, and welcome to Making Creativity Pay, the podcast where we talk to people in creative industries about how they promote and market their work. I'm Dan Barnett, and this episode I spoke with Jen Cooper, founder of Vertical Drama Love. Jen is an expert in the rapidly growing area of vertical dramas. We talk about what vertical dramas are and the rapid rise in popularity of vertical dramas in the West, and the change in the format from its beginnings in China. We talk about what moving from niche to mainstream in the West may mean for the format, how large players like Disney starting to offer vertical content may change things, and also the impact for Jen as someone who's been involved in the sector initially as a fan and now as a consultant. I started by asking Jen to give a quick introduction about herself.
Hi, my name's Jen. I'm the founder of Vertical Drama Love, which is a fan page, website, global consultancy on a new emerging form of media called vertical dramas, which are short dramas that you watch on your phone in an app.
So, I mean, if you were describing vertical dramas to someone beyond that literal thing that it's
in the 9:16, yeah.
portrait rather than landscape, I mean, what would you kind of say are the key things that kind of define the area?
So basically, it's meeting the audience where they are on their phone. So there are lots of different apps that heavily advertise through social media. So you may well have seen ads for them without even realizing that's what they are. Basically, it's a film cut into 1 to 1.5 minute episodes. The app gives you about 7 to 10 episodes for free with the idea you get so hooked in, you're like, I want to know what happens next. And then it goes into gamification. So you use coins to unlock more episodes. If you've done mobile gaming, you'll know how it works. You watch ads to earn certain coins. You can follow us on YouTube, you get a bit more coins, and then you can buy coin bundles. That's quite an expensive way to do it. So you soon get savvy and realize a better way is to do a weekly subscription. And that's a much more cost-effective way of doing it. What they are is unusual. So when they brought these over from China, it's sort of a huge industry in China, they thought the audience was going to be, the sort of the mobile phone TikTok generation. But actually what the audience has proven to be is women like me, who are women 30 to 65, because most of these stories are basically romance stories. So there's a very big crossover with the type of stories told here with romance novels. So actually that's who the main users are. But it's proven to be a massive, massive hit. It's sort of been going 2 years now, and it's gone from being just kind of a few apps to an absolute explosion of apps. Everyone wants to get involved, and it's generating a huge amount of work for actors and crew all around the world, which is very hard to find in other parts of the media. So Hollywood is now involved as well, and every major Hollywood studio you can think of is looking or experimenting with this format and sort of seeing how they can bring the Hollywood touch to it. So I think it's going very much from being a sort of underground media form to, I think, more and more people have heard of it, and probably by the end of the year, I think everyone will have heard of them.
I mean, within that, it seems quite a fragmented space at the moment. There's kind of lots of app players in there. I mean, does that kind of harm the industry in that it's kind of hard to know where to go rather than it just being one big thing that, this is the place for vertical dramas?
Yeah, it's reminding me a bit of the dot-com bubble at the moment. So you've got some huge sort of juggernaut apps that dominate. So these are generally the Chinese-owned ones. So you've got Real Short and Drum, Box, Shortmax. You've got some Ukrainian-owned ones. My Drama's big. Interestingly, these are all owned by tech companies. So these are not traditional film and media. It's tech companies who understand apps, understand gamification, and are then making films, but within that space. More and more are setting up because a lot of people have realized that the way to make the money is to have the app rather than just making the content. So we're getting more and more localized apps. There's Turkish apps now, there's British apps in the process of being set up. It's going to happen all across Europe, and there's American apps as well. So at the moment, there's this massive explosion, which is obviously more than really the audience can keep up with. So it's apps beginning to develop a brand identity. And I think as the genres widen out beyond kind of the core of romance, I think, we'll end up with like a horror specialist app or, crime app. And it will actually be a bit more like a sort of standard multiple TV channels and streaming services that you go to speciality. So yeah, the prediction is it will keep growing this year, but will eventually sort of come back in again and the key players will be established.
It's still like a growing industry and a relatively new one. And I guess some people might think, oh, you can't do anything in 60, 90 seconds. And people are quite dismissive of it. But obviously, obviously you love him. From your kind of point of view, I mean, kind of how would you kind of back against that?
I think basically there's a creativity that is born out of having limited. So these things are made very fast. They're made in about 7 days, 12-hour days. Actors have 1 or 2 takes if they're lucky. It's much more similar to like soap or Bollywood production speed. The budgets are low, so you're generally looking 150 to 180,000 US dollars, and they're put out really, really fast as well. So often it'll be on an app within a month. So it's very much non-union, quick work. It's a Wild West. There's good productions and not so good productions. But sometimes I think that creativity forces it. And I think the storytelling, initially at least, was very much sort of almost returning to slightly more just escapist sort of dream fulfillment storytelling, and there's a lot of sort of billionaires and things. And I think it's slightly a reflection of where the world is and that people want to switch off and escape. And actually have something that is designed to hook them in quickly. There's not like a long, slow build up. It's not like you've got to really concentrate to work out what's going on. I think it's art that's where the world is. It has actually oddly improved some people's attention span because obviously there's the big issue with TV about, they're having to, Netflix writers are being told to repeat plot points a lot because people aren't always paying attention because they're on the phone. This actually solves that because they are on their phone. They can't also be scrolling WhatsApp. They're hooked into the vertical drama. And it's very, very easy for the minute their attention drops them to scroll to something else. So they have really worked out how to do that. I mean, that's led to good and bad things over the past year. There's storylines that have definitely gone down a more unsavory route, I would say, just because we know, sex and violence attracts attention. So there's definitely been that route, but there's also been a real route of kind of really like, actually, this is a really exciting genre that people are excited about and is allowing us to tell stories in a way that we're struggling with in traditional Hollywood and TV because of just the length of time of development and gatekeepers and things aren't being commissioned. So it's bringing a load of amazing minds in who are like, actually, yeah, let's learn this format and let's tell really exciting, cool stories. And that for me is the highlight, as well as the fact it's just generating jobs. It's always the key thing. It's very rare to find anything in growth. So to find an industry that's actually growing and allowing, recent graduates, film school to be straight on a set working is huge, and just building up momentum. So people can very quickly in this industry, build up momentum. And, with a traditional film, they might have been in a film, but they're waiting 3 or 4 years for it to come out and then have it for their show reel. In a vertical drama, they can within 2-3 months have a decent show reel if this is how I look on screen and really establish themselves within this industry as a leading player.
Ultimately, this is a business. And do you feel that they've kind of struck the right balance between providing content and monetization? Because it's always difficult that, you can't just give everything away, but if you charge too much, you're going to narrow your market. Are people still kind of trying to find that right balance? And is there a lot of kind of change and innovation in that kind of thing?
I think the fact that the amount of apps is increasing is helping the consumer because it's lowering the price because they have to get more competitive. The monetization, I think some people are very savvy and will only watch for free. So we'll just very specifically, I will watch the ads and save up the coins and watch it that way. I think more people do that than people realize. They're willing to watch in a sort of fragmented way. But I think other people are quite willing to spend the money. And I think you have to look at it more as a fan spend, because if you compare it to, say, something like Netflix, it's like this is a really expensive way to consume media. You're looking at about $18.99 for a subscription for a week. I compare it more to a cinema ticket, and I'm like, I could pay about that for a cinema ticket, or I could unlock an app and I've got 100 plus titles vaguely of content I want to watch. So I think that's a key. And you have to look at it more as a fan. So, for instance, if you're into live music, you're spending quite a lot on gigs. If you're into sport, you're attending matches. It's more that kind of thing. It's kind of a hobby spend. The people who are into this are really into them, and that's the thing that they're spending their money on. And I think once you see that, it makes a bit more sense. That is the big challenge moving forward, because the women spending here are generally because there's not much content elsewhere. I mean, someone was explaining the other day, the CW is pretty much, that's probably a lot of similar audience, but they've cancelled a lot of shows and not much is happening. Hollywood doesn't really make rom-coms. So that's why these people here are spending, because they just can't find it elsewhere. I think the challenge is as you try and widen it out with different genres like horror and crime, it's like, well, actually, there are horror streamers and, horror does quite well in cinema. So actually, is there a need for those people to then spend more on something in their phone? So that's the kind of challenge going forward. The expectation is it will go and follow the model in China, which is that eventually most of the apps became free and it's sustained through advertising. Advertisers really like it because it's on an app and tech. They can get really clear data of who's watching and who they're targeting. So actually, the marketers and the advertisers are very much here and excited about this space.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's so many different parts of media, but they all tend to kind of end up the same. You kind of go through all these different paths and everything else. you've got like kind of Substack that's now got a TV app, and everything just kind of becomes the same with ads. People try and create something different, but ads always seems to be the sensible way of going, and the most likely way of kind of monetizing.
Yeah. No, I agree. So yeah, I think that's where it will go. I think you're right. So I think if you can sit back with a longer lens, you can see the pattern that will probably happen in it. Yeah.
You mentioned a bit about fans there, and I mean, how did you get into this, and how important do you think fans and evangelists are in this space to kind of to make it grow?
I found it the way that most people found it, of browsing social media, and now popped up and was like, what was this? I'd already been watching Chinese and Korean long form dramas, so I kind of slightly recognised some of the tropes and storytelling. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Someone's finally sort of taken that story and set it in the West with a Western cast. And I was like, oh wow, there's an app with kind of quite a bit of stuff I want to watch on it. So that's how I got involved. I just crashed onto Instagram. I was like, this is really weird. This industry seems quite busy, but most of them don't even have credits at the end of the shows. It was very, very hard in 2024 when I was watching to find any information. I think there were 2 press articles and that was it. And I was like, I'm recognising cast, I'm recognising locations, I'm recognising costume in some situations. But I can't find anything about how they're made. So I went on the internet in Christmas 2024 because I was bored and was just like, I'm just going to write some reviews because, why not? And I think it was that thing I was asking, does anyone know how these are made? And I think it was the situation of when no one's been interested in your job, it's been very much dismissed as, oh, you're making those terrible vertical dramas. And then someone's genuinely going, does anyone know? Tell me about your job. But I suddenly have people on set all around the world going, I'm on set right now. What do you want to know? Tell me.
Yeah.
And then it was the same with fans as well. So then a lot of people watching these, but I don't know people in my day-to-day life. And they were like, oh, wow, through you, we can connect with other fans. So it's just kind of all grown from that. And I think what's really happened, I was very much like, well, we need to try and legitimize the industry. So I sort of set up things like awards, and I did like a sort of online fan convention with some co-organizers, and was just trying to bring some legitimacy to the space, because I was like, well, these are really creative people who should be rewarded. And I think that's grown as well. So obviously, a lot more people are sort of set up and do fan accounts and review things. And that's great because there's so much that goes out. No one can watch everything. So the more people that review, it's better. There's more chance people have great stuff. But also I think the other key bit about the space is that the actors and actresses are pretty active and accessible on social media. And I think that's a huge part of people come to watch these things, but then that's the thing that they love. So there's a lot of fandoms around certain actors and actresses, ones who will be in demand because, particularly when a new app sets up, they get a certain name, they know that they can bring more traffic to that app just because that fandom will go wherever and pay whatever to watch that person. So I think that, and the sort of, the savvy people who've lent into that, those actors and actresses who've been making them since 2023, they're all now, a lot of them are writing or producing or, very much involved in the industry on more levels than just acting because of the speed with which it works. So I think that's the exciting thing. It is an industry on sort of this huge growth trajectory at the moment, and sort of the people have been able to go very quickly from, I guess, sort of just starting out to being in a position of sort of influence and creating what they want to for themselves.
You're recently back from Canada, the
Yes.
Primetime conference.
Yes.
I guess that was media across the board. But how big was vertical drama there?
I think it was interesting in Canada because I think Canada's quite receptive, because Canada, firstly, is very busy making vertical dramas. There's a lot that are made in Vancouver. They transitioned over very quickly. Also, Toronto is quite busy as well. So there's already quite a lot being made, and successful Canadian production companies. I think also because Canada has a big legacy with Hallmark and Lifetime, there's probably a bit more understanding and awareness of a female audience. So I think I felt like we bypassed what can happen with other, when I was in London and stuff, of like the slight dismissal of them as they're just, snack crack, as I've heard them be described. No one's saying these are high art, by the way, but they are delivering joy to a lot of people. And I think Canada was much more receptive to that. So yeah, I think there's kind of a lot of interest. And I think the thing that I think is exciting people is just, this is a way to tell stories and reach an audience. And I think that's the thing. I mean, particularly people I've spoken to in the UK and TV, you're like, we end up doing a lot of reality and documentary just because that's what's get commissioned is easier. It's really, really hard to get a drama. But actually, we got into this, we wanted to tell stories, not unscripted. So I think it's all those people who are excited and just trying to figure out their place. It's complicated. It is tight budgets, low budgets. There's been this slight I guess, misrepresentation, because everyone sees these words of billion-dollar industry, and it's like, well, it doesn't really. It's not a gold mine. I think what it is I think if you come in and think you're going to make a lot of quick money and exit, that's not true. But if you were like, well, actually, this is a way that I can be working and be on a set and be creating rather than, I don't know, in the office job or just struggling to get any work, that's where it is providing it. So I think that's the income. It's just kind of managing expectations a bit. But I think Canada got that, and I mean, Canada's an attractive place to film as well. You know, they've got the great tax breaks and systems. You know, UK is losing out a bit at the moment because vertical dramas at the moment sort of fall between the taxes here, so they come under the right tax to get the discount. So, you know, it's more expensive to make here. Canada have it. I've been told you can film 4 there and basically get 1 for free because of the tax system. So, yeah, Canada are well ahead and I think really leading some of the charge in North America.
Mentioning UK there, do you think then that it's kind of been slept on in the UK, that there's not enough there and it's kind of it's a missed opportunity?
So we've been making vertical dramas in the UK since February 24. I think there's several challenges. Basically, until about August 2025, the main way they were made is that you act as a service provider. So one of the Chinese apps basically gives you a script and a budget, make this, go away, make it, hand it back. That's it. The quality of those scripts, that's all over the place. I think there was an understandable UK reticence to be involved. Also, you know, there's some great production companies here. There were a few pretty bad ones as well, which didn't help the reputation. So I think understandably there was quite a reluctance to get involved. I think UK actors were a bit more aware of their CV. Did this something they wanted to be associated with? What are the long-term ramifications? I think my understanding in America was just Hollywood was struggling so much. There was a little bit more of a willingness of just, we want to work, we'll take whatever. It is changing in the UK. It's evolving. The scripts are getting better. I think people are a bit more happy to be associated with them now, and there's sort of been good quality ones that have come out. I think we are still behind, I would say. I mean, America's at least 9 months ahead of us in the cycle. I think there need to be UK stories on the screen, somewhere with the sort of the rich cultural heritage of the UK. There are various projects at the moment to set up UK-based apps, which I think will happen sometime this year. But obviously, there's been a slight slowdown because of just the time that takes and investment, and getting transparent numbers to show investors is pretty much impossible. So that's delayed a lot. But I can say I know all the sort of the big broadcasters are at least looking at it and seeing how it might fit in within their portfolio. And I think it will happen. And my hope would be that actually the UK is leading the way, because I think there's just the creativity here. But probably the other thing that's needed is, I would say, a lot of the stories in their current format were probably seen as a bit too cheesy for a UK audience. I think the UK audience is a little bit more knowing and savvy. I always think the best comparison is probably something like Julie Cooper Riders. That's kind of slightly more the tone. So I think there probably needs to be specific content made for that audience that is a bit more, you know, I guess innuendo and kind of knowing and wink you're in on the joke. So I think it will happen, but it's just taking its time. I think we are a little bit late off the mark, but I think that's probably the same for most of Europe. Most of Europe's kind of slowly getting there and working out how we do a localized version of this industry.
And obviously you've got the big players like Disney coming in, maybe not into vertical dramas as such, but in terms of vertical content. Is that good for the industry in that it kind of does legitimize the concept? Or does it mean that the big players will just come in and swallow everything up?
I think it's good for legitimizing it. It's going to be interesting what people put out and how they perceive it. I mean, some people are like, you know, we'll just cut up a film, squish it and stick it out. That's not the same. It is a very different style of storytelling. As I said, it's designed to be in these episode beats, and every episode has to hook you, hook, to keep you watching through the end. So I think if you just do that, it doesn't work. And then it's easy to go, oh, this doesn't work. And it's like, well, no, you've not actually done the format properly. I think there does need to be an understanding as well of why all these viewers here are watching this and not watching what's already on, you know, network or streaming TV. So I think there has to be that. I also think there's a challenge for the bigger players just because of the weight of the name. You know, that's the big thing, saying Disney's doing vertical dramas, and they won't necessarily want to be associated with some, as I said, some of the problematic content out there. I know there's been sort of thoughts about maybe the way some of the bigger people do it is they use their IP, you know, so you've got, we do a spin-off of whatever show, but, you know, there's a sort of side character spin-off that's a vertical drama, so maybe it sits like that. So, but then is that more complicated? And it's trying not to break the budget formula as well. You know, you can't make things too complicated because it all falls apart if you start trying to push the budgets up too high because of just the way the industry works. I think it's a good thing overall, but there's definitely reservations, I would say. It's a little bit, we will see what happens this year and where the chips fall.
I mean, you were talking about maybe kind of things like horror and crime
Mm.
are maybe served fine elsewhere.
Mm.
But for me, looking at the kind of the sector, it seems like comedy is a perfect thing.
I would love comedy. There's an odd resistance to comedy. I think there's a feeling from, particularly I think the Chinese-owned apps that I've heard about, there's concern about, is comedy universal? Will it translate? Which to me is slightly odd because I'm like, well, Friends is probably one of the most globally watched things, and that's got comedy. But I think there's been this kind of fear of, is it too, is comedy different in different countries? I don't understand. Again, you look at sort of the big TikTokers, some of them is kind of more silent comedy, isn't it? It's kind of reactions rather than needing the nuances of different cultures. So yeah, there's been a bit of reluctance, I think, but the thing about once someone works it out and cracks the code, everyone will then do it. There's no pride, everyone will just remake and copy that idea. And to me, it makes sense as well because it fits in with the thing that vertical dramas deliver, which is like the dopamine hit of the romance and happy ending and the goodies overcome the baddies. And I think obviously comedy delivers that as well. Seems to me an obvious thing if it worked to bring in kind of people who are already creating comic content on social media because they understand the format. It's partly whether they need to, because to be honest, they're probably making more money working as they are than like coming to vertical dramas. It's just whether they had an interest in, I guess, developing a kind of more of an acting thing. That would be why they would do it. So, yeah, I agree. I think there's a huge, huge scope. It doesn't seem to be prioritized at the moment, but hopefully this year someone will crack the code and then everyone will be making comedy.
And I mean, I'm kind of looking through the YouTube, you speak to a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
in the industry. I think you mentioned it earlier, the people are quite open on that. I mean, has that been a pleasant surprise that how happy people are to talk about it? And
Yeah, I think I never intended to do YouTube, but it's just half of what I do, well, actually, most of what I do isn't intended. It's just all happened organically. And I was doing some sort of little written questions with actors on Instagram, and my first actor on my YouTube was like, well, no, a lot of my fans struggle with English, and this needs to be a YouTube interview. And I was like, oh, and it's like, just do it. It's like, okay, fine. And then once you do one, everyone's interested. It's trying to give people a platform, I think, people who to be able to discuss their work and sort of bring up things they like and sort of hopes for the industry. And then once I started speaking to kind of not just obviously on-screen people, which obviously fans love to be able to see an interview with an actor and actress, but also people like, directors and producers, I found that I got a lot of viewers who are either people in the industry or wanting to come into the industry. And it was like, this is really helpful that you've got a little playlist of, interviews with people who've written vertical dramas. So yeah, I think it was very much providing resources because, as I said, in 2024, I think there were 2 press articles about vertical dramas, and I've kind of tracked them on my website, and you can see it kind of was still pretty quiet. It was a big deal when, someone's been mentioned vertical dramas up until about July, August. And I think then when the Fox Holy Water deal was announced, then it exploded, and there's daily articles every day about vertical dramas, and there's a lot more resources. But when I set out, that was very much my aim, to just provide people a bit of a guide to the industry.
Yeah, I know, I think it might have been a few months ago now, The Rest is Entertainment did a segment on vertical dramas. I mean, was that, especially in the UK, was that kind of like quite a big thing that, that's starting to get into mainstream?
Not really, because they were very dismissive. It wasn't hugely helpful. I don't think they quite got the potential of the industry, and they were just, I think, more where I understand, but I think a lot of UK media reviewers will be of, this is trashy, which I understand. I can see why they're saying that, but I think the angle I always had was, this is providing work. We need to generate work because there's not enough work for people. So that's always been my view of the industry. No one is sat here saying this is perfect, but we can be involved and it can grow. So I think for me, the bigger one was I managed to get myself on BBC Radio 4 in about March last year. That got heard and picked up, so The Guardian got in touch off that. And The Guardian then did an article, and I think The Guardian had done a few articles since then. So they did another one after they spoke to me, and that was much more, the one they did with me and a few other people was like the business side of it rather than the cultural review. Then they did a day on set with one of the main directors in the UK, Dan Lowenstein, so that was really good. So they did a day on set following him. And I think that was the article actually that really seemed to put them more on the map, because both myself and that director and sort of everyone else in the UK suddenly got details, because then, ITV News did. I think actually the Rest is Entertainment one was actually probably quite incidental. It's possibly maybe put the word in people's heads, but I don't think it actually has really led to the development of it in the UK. I think it's actually been the mainstream media, one or two of TV showings of it. The big thing as well is I pitched to The Guardian about this time last year about vertical dramas, and I pitched to one of their cultural writers, and he was like, I really get it, but I can't, I've talked to my editors, they're not interested at the moment. So when they did pick it up, it was more business rather than culture following it. But he got in touch last week and was like, I finally got a green light to watch a few and review them. And I was like, yay! And also, you're not the target audience. But these are some good ones. Good luck. But he kind of understands as well that, yes, I mean, I know him. He's a brilliant writer, but he could be quite brutal with the pen. But he knows that the goal is just not to snuff out the entire industry, I think, with a kind of dismissive thing. Because for me, yes, a lot of these improving. Yes, we can tell better stories, but these are also bringing joy to a lot of people.
And in terms of kind of promoting the YouTube and your Instagram, I noticed, as a kind of example, you're on Instagram but not on TikTok. You've got YouTube, but you don't have the same content as a podcast. Is that just because there's only so many hours in a day?
It's because I'm one person. Yeah, everyone's like, you should do TikTok. Be like, I know, I just can't. Everyone's like, why isn't it a podcast as well? It's like, I'm one person, and for, I guess, from January till November last year, I was running a full-time business of my own alongside. So it's part-time. So it's like that. Since December, this has been my full-time job. But it does pretty much take up all my time. I mean, I guess ideally long-term, I get in a position where I have a team and then they can do that. But at the moment, it's been very much working out where to put the time. Instagram does seem to be the main social media at the moment for vertical dramas, because, as I said, the audience does tend to be me, so women 30 to 60. I think it will grow on TikTok and stuff, but you need a specific style on that. That's just not my skill set. The podcast is literally just really needs to happen. I just have not had time. But yeah, that's kind of one of the challenges thing. I mean, I come from a business where, part of what we did a lot of online business support, was the social media channels. And the biggest challenge is always there's so many to cover, particularly if you're a single business owner, like it's just you. Like, how on earth do you decide for each business sort of where to put the time and effort in to grow? And I think it's a constant challenge. Obviously, there's always new things like, should you be on Discord? Should you be doing Substack? Should you be doing this? Should you be doing that? And it's a real headache, and I don't know that anyone quite gets it right. You just kind of, I think my main learning is, rather than trying to do everything not that well, try and double down on 2 or 3 and at least deliver as best as you can on those.
And within that, are you able to kind of be disciplined to kind of say, right, I need to have 6 pieces out this week. I need to do 3 videos. I do blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. Or is it just constantly running at the standstill?
It's normally running to standstill. I mean, Instagram is daily. It is a bit of a feed the beast. I'm not really interested in numbers on Instagram, because I've always, my previous job was like, I've seen people get overly obsessed with numbers on Instagram. It doesn't do their mental well-being any good. I feel like it's actually, if you've just got a few followers, but they all really buy into your business, that's much more useful than, vanity metrics. However, I did identify that if I could get over a certain amount, it just makes it easier for me to advocate for the industry and people pay attention to me. So, and one of the ways you do that is just, churning out the content. And also, I'm not really short on ideas and the stuff to put out. So kind of, that's not a problem either. But content's easy. It's just the time to make it. With YouTube, that was one of the early things I identified sort of when I was running this alongside my other business, of like, oh, actually, people are watching these. I could probably monetize this fairly soon. Again, it's time challenge, so I've very much gone with done is better than perfect. So my YouTube interview is a little bit rough and ready, just do a very quick edit and out they go. Honestly, there's probably an awareness now, because I knew it would happen. You've got quite a lot of people coming into the space who have very slick studios, they're able to get guests in and sort of interview them, obviously based in LA. There's people come film TV. So obviously everything looks gorgeous and is beautifully lit and edited. So I don't think I'll ever be in that position. And if you were doing that, that would need to be the main focus. And I don't think it is. So it will be interesting whether there's still a place for me. I'm not sure. One of the things I have got is that I've got kind of a trust and reputation in the industry. So kind of people are happy to talk to me and know my style. But I was always aware as well that as it grows, this is an odd comparison, but I always look to Formula One as a comparison because obviously Formula One kind of really grew. And then there's all this kind of, I guess, fandoms and business around it besides the actual Formula One. And kind of, I know fans there who sort of managed to go professional and turn podcasts. And I kind of looked at it like this, and that there was basically nothing when I started. There was no fandoms really beyond sort of specific ones for actors. There were no sort of hubs for fans. There were no reviews. So I was kind of trying to build that. And I'm also aware that partly as doing that, I am likely to be, I may have a limited time in the space. Does that make sense? It's kind of odd, but it's just natural because people will come in with more experience and more resources. So, if I've been able to do a bit to help legitimize it and put stuff in, I'm here for the ride while it lasts, basically.
Yeah, you're almost kind of like the fan version of some of the maybe indie producers where, maybe in 5 years' time, it's Disney, Netflix, HBO, everything's vertical drama there, and, the individual goes away, which is always the same. And I guess, that's kind of a difficult within any growing thing. The one example might be of you've got a favorite band and then they become successful and then you don't feel as close to them anymore. How hard is it to kind of keep the good things within the industry at the moment?
That's definitely a big concern. So I think that's a really valid concern that a lot of the fans have at the moment, of it's been a bit their secret. So the fact it's our thing that everyone knows about. And yes, I think they're aware that as it grows, that the sort of the access and that community feel may well change. There have been a few sort of Hollywood names announced, and actually there's been a bit of and I think that will continue as I'm aware of more that will be announced. It's tricky because I can totally understand that feeling of this is kind of our thing and we're slightly losing it, and as more people get involved and maybe we are going to lose some of that, what we're enjoying, that kind of access. But then on the flip side, some of the other stuff fans don't like, which is, the really problematic storylines and, not great working conditions for actors and things that will be improved by Hollywood, and other businesses getting involved. So it's kind of like you get some of the bits you want, but you might lose. It's hugely in flux at the moment. So it will be, I think it's very much wait and see. I'd say and everything moves so fast, who knows where it will be in 3 months.
Yes. I think you had a video with one of the app makers, I think it's probably a few weeks or a couple of months ago now. And it's interesting the way you kind of said that they were a rarity and that they show the credits of the actors and actresses and everything. Do you think like things like that, when it becomes more big business, will be an improvement?
I think so. I think it's fair to say there's a little bit of, as people sort of, the names get known and become stars, then their kind of rates go up. Actors don't necessarily want to pay those. And I think a bit like, well, we made you stars so you can make other people stars. Also, everyone wants a job in this now. Everyone who, I'm told, all the actors and actresses tell me, like a year ago, their friends were like, what are you doing? And now their friends are like, can you get me a job? So it's changed very quickly. I think there's a little bit of a power struggle. It would be fair, tussle, maybe it would say, to be going on of apps like, well, we'll just cast new people. But then fans like, but we really like these people. The app that you're mentioning is one called Shorts app, which is really interesting. They were one of the first who, Real Short always had credits at the end, but app Shorts are one of the ones that they almost do like a movie at the beginning of like, when a character enters, it's not only the character name, but this is who they're played by. I think what that's done is they've really, and they also credit writers. And so what that's really allowed them to do is they've built it is a small app, but it's a quality app that attracts a lot of big talent who want to go and work for them because they know that the stories will be good and they'll be treated well. And actually, it's interesting. I'm just releasing I do a fan awards. So, and one of the things is a shortlist for best app. And they've made that shortlist, which I think would surprise a lot of people, as if you look at, apps by finances, they're definitely not up there. But I think they're there because of the fans love it and the quality that they put out. So I think that probably is where it will develop. I think I did a big fan survey last year, and I think one of the things the fans are quite aware of is that a lot of the apps, there's not a huge interest in retention. It's all about just acquiring customers. There's not really anything like, customer care or service or anything, trying to get through to someone on helpline if you've been charged the wrong thing is impossible. So I think that's something that the smaller apps, the ones like Shorts and the kind of the new American ones coming onto the market have identified of like, actually, let's try and keep people on the app, do a lot more retention and build communities there. So I think that's going to be a focus. And again, it's this sort of building this brand loyalty that at the moment, a lot of people will just hop between apps of like, oh, I've got a bit of money this week, I'll get a different subscription. Who do people recommend? And it's trying to sort of, I think, move beyond that to actually, I really love this app, and I'm really locked into kind of what they're producing and the way they run things.
Absolutely. But it sounds like a really exciting time that there's so much happening. And like you said, in 3 months, it could all be completely different.
Yes, 100%. I think that's one thing. Nothing stays still. So data and information goes out of date really quickly. So yeah, it all moves so fast.
And yes, you were saying about it now being your full-time business. Do you have a kind of, it's kind of difficult then to have if you sat down with the bank, say, for example, and you said, there's my 12-month plan, but you've got no idea of what's going to happen in the next 3 months within the industry. I mean, how hard is that for you?
Really, really tricky, to be honest. It is sort of done by the seat of my pants. It's kind of odd because I've gone from, I ran a business, a team of 10, and it was very much a, contracts by hours. So I have a specific project, you get paid for that project to be done, or you do 10 hours of work, whatever, for each person a month. And I've moved now to something which is like multiple income streams, which is new. So, there's a little bit of money from YouTube and a little bit of money sometimes when I have a newsletter. I get money through basically Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee, which is obviously amazing and wonderful, but you can't predict at all. You can't guarantee any of that. And then, yes, bits of consultancy work as well now, which is kind of probably, I think, with all these things where you actually make a bit of money. But again, it's very much a testing ground because it's so new. Yes, I think it would be a lot easier now with a business plan because there's all the press articles. I think the challenge would have been trying to put something together in spring last year. That's not really possible. So yeah, I don't really have a long-term vision at the moment. It's kind of, you take the opportunity where it is, slightly see where it goes, how things land, and then working out as sort of opportunities arise, sort of what the right ones to take. So I don't have such a clear goal for myself. I have a clearer goal of what I'm trying to achieve, which is I kind of come back to like basically more good work for good people. So I know that's that goal. It's just for myself. It's a little bit more. We'll see how this goes and what happens.
Yeah, it sounds like exciting times anyway.
Yes, definitely exciting. I mean, I think this is just the industry. Just I've been told there's people who were PAs who a year later are head of development at an app. One of the main actors in the space, he told me he's done 50 lead projects now. To have done that in 2 years and built up what he has, and he's just done we call them horizontals. He's just done a big horizontal project, and I think that's what's possibly going to happen more. It's just it has allowed people to have this very rapid career trajectory, and particularly I think with the actors and actresses, because they bring these big fan followings, that you can see that more standard TV and film will actually might be like, well, actually, if we bring you in, we know we're bringing certain eyes. So I think there's going to be a bit more of a crossover both ways, not just of names going into vertical dramas, but vertical drama names sort of appearing on other screens as well. But yeah, the key thing is, I think for everyone who's been involved, is just it is this bizarre and exciting trajectory of just steroids. It keeps being used of just how fast it's exploded. And if you happen to be in the right place like me, I was just in the right place at the right time. I mean, I as I said, I have no film and TV background. I've just watched a lot of stuff, but everyone's like, I was a bookseller for years and then I ran my own business. It's all a little random that I'm here right now talking to you about this.
Thanks to Jen for coming onto the podcast. You can find out more details about where to find Jen online and more details about all things vertical drama in the show notes. If you enjoyed this, check out other episodes of Variety comedians, musicians, authors and others in creative industries talking about trying to make creativity pay. Thanks for listening.